Let me call to order the Cities Association Legislative Action Committee meeting of May 11th, 2023. Let me go ahead and we'll just move to roll call and I'll talk a little bit more later. Go ahead.
Ann Bybee.
Present.
Hung Wei.
Yep.
Marie Blankley. Or Dion Bracco. Lisa Flegger.
Here.
Stanley Mock.
Present.
Matthew Hudas.
Here.
Carmen Montano.
Here.
Javid Elahi. Or Brian Mekachuk. Mark Turner.
Here.
Ellen Kamei. Or Pat Showalter. Lydia Koo.
Here.
Peter Ortiz.
And Peter's remote, but we'll talk about that in a few moments. So Mark is absent currently in the room.
Peter's here.
Thank you, Peter.
Kathy Watanabe. Here. Yon Zhao. Yon Zhao. Or Tina Walia. Larry Klein.
Present.
And 1, 2. So 10 people, we have quorum.
Thank you very much. And just a little bit of discussion before we get to non-agendized items. So Peter, one of the issues is Shali sent out a request for those that wanted to meet remote so we could update the agenda. We'll be putting a process in place for members who want to do remote and updating our agenda accordingly in the future. I know that you told her last month about wanting to do remote for last month's meeting, and she updated the agenda accordingly. I talked with Margaret Avakova, and she will be making this clearer in a future board meeting as far as what our remote rules are and all that. So you'll attend as a public person today, and I think we only have the consent calendar item to go through, so it's not as critical. And then you can, basically put forward your bills that you're interested in when we get to that. But just from a future note, and this is for everyone, we'll be talking more about how to deal with the Brown Act, and all of our cities are kind of dealing with it slightly different, but and the state laws continue to change. We'll see whether or not that changes this year, but it is important that we're noticing our meetings accordingly and making sure that we're following the Brown Act rules or the additional rules as far as which we talked a little bit about a few months ago, and some of you might not have been at that meeting on if you're sick on the day of and how to conceivably go through the hybrid through a day of hybrid request. So anyway, we'll talk about that at a future meeting. It's not for this meeting. And, Shali will try to better inform us, and then we'll have it as a future agenda item, not in this meeting, but in the main meeting. So with that, are there any oral communications from the public? Anyone in the room who wishes to speak? Let's see, none on non-agendized items. Yes, and remote. Peter? Or
Hello, yes. I'm sorry, you had mentioned that an email was sent out that we weren't going to be allowed to virtually call into this meeting. Who sent that email?
so this was several months ago when we talked about moving from fully remote, and it basically after the governor's state of declaration, emergency declaration ended at that point. And so it was one of the meetings before that, we talked about what it meant. I think it was January of remote meetings. So we'll have this agendized at a future time. You're fine. It is fine for you to do a remote meeting as long as it's correctly agendized. And so that, as far as what conference room you're in, and it's kind of going back to the old Brown Act rules.
So, it sounds like this may be I guess a staffing issue, because I believe you provided the room location and all that.
Absolutely. So if you're providing, and I know several different boards that are doing, or several different IGRs that are doing a similar sort of thing. You know, if you're doing a permanently remote, setting up, you know, a San Jose location permanently, or giving the appropriate notice to Shali prior to that meeting or prior to whatever meeting you want to attend.
Okay.
Okay, any other oral communications from our members? Seeing none, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Or were there any comments or changes to our consent agenda item? No. Is there anyone from the remote who wishes to speak on a consent agenda item?
Hi, it's from Amici.
Thank you. And your hand is still raised, Peter, just in case. No, nothing? Okay. Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Can you please conduct a roll call vote?
Sure. Motion to approve the agenda,
Yes.
consent agenda was made by Fliger, seconded by Turner. Sunnyvale,
Yes.
Saratoga. It's not here. Santa Clara,
Yes.
San Jose, not
Not here.
Palo Alto,
Yes.
Mountain View is not here.
I'm here.
Oh, here.
Look at that.
Funny.
You approve the consent agenda.
I know.
Aye.
Who lives the closest?
My mom and I had to switch for the daycare.
Ah,
My husband's working. So.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Morgan Hills,
Yes.
Monte Sereno, not here. Milpitas,
Yes.
Los Gatos,
Yes.
Los Altos Hills,
Yes.
Los Altos, yeah. Gilroy, not here. Cupertino,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
with 11 ayes, motion carries.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 2, bill selection and submissions for consideration. So, you know, every year we kind of have a flexible list to a certain degree. And, you know, for a lot of times, the bills change throughout the year. And this was my goal for every city to kind of put forward 1 or 2. Sometimes we had, in past years, several members that put forward quite a few bills to look at, you know, and kind of had a bigger share of what this organization was looking at. And not that we don't want to look at a lot of things, but just as we've seen from a timeliness standpoint, it's almost impossible to talk about a large number of bills. You know, we're normally, you know, depending upon how long these sessions go through probably sometimes only 2 bills to maybe 4, maybe 6 if we're lucky, if there were short bills over the last few years when this organization, when LAC was meeting. And so this was an attempt to at least put forward a series of bills that one or 2 from each city that you or your council or your, you know, or your staff thought were higher priority for this organization to look at, to take a stand on, to talk about. Sometimes, you know, we go through discussions and decide that we don't want to take a stand pro or con on a specific bill. But this is one of the things that this organization is here for, is to kind of focus on bills that conceivably we should be having a Santa Clara County advocacy on, what this organization is there for. And just as a reminder, you know, what happens from a process standpoint is, you know, the bills that are proposed, we go through, we discuss at a future meeting. So the bills that you're proposing tonight, you know, you can talk about what the bill number is, talk about, you know, why it's important to you. And that's pretty much it. You know, it's not a vote. It's not anything of that nature. You know, we haven't agendized any of that, and we'll have a ranked and the full list so that we have more flexibility to talk about any of the bills, especially as they continue to change at future meetings of this organization. But tonight it's to put forward a bill or 2. And if you don't have any bill tonight, that is completely fine. You can pass it to Shali and myself and talk about what you would like to see in a future date. The bills are still being ripped and replaced in certain cases, and so, or completely changed from what they were a few weeks ago. So I understand it's kind of a moving target. The other thing I would like to just bring up is if your city is writing letters for or against specific bills, it's up to you whether or not you want that. But one of the things that our city does is put together a website where everybody, so all the bills that we oppose or that we are for, we actually put forward on our website, and so it's easily accessible. And as it's working its way through the different committees, sometimes we write second letters or third letters, especially as it's tweaked. But if your organization, I don't know how well you have that listed to the public. And that's one of the things that I would just like to know at a future date. But if you have a link of all of your bills, you can pass them to Shali. And depending upon what your organization does, if it's a letter, and I don't want to add additional work to Shali right now. So as opposed to forwarding her all the letters that your city is signing, if it's for the public, that's good enough. Just giving her that link, and we can put something on the cities association website to kind of branch out to each of our cities individual letters in favor or against any bill. But that's kind of a general process. Definitely it's worthwhile that we as a county do some sort of advocacy when we can. Our individual cities have a voice, our county, and sometimes what you might think is important, your council is split upon and doesn't want to take a stand on. And so this is something that you also might conceivably bring to this wider organization to figure out whether or not you want to at least advocate that where you couldn't convince your council, maybe you can convince the majority of this board. But just as a reminder, we conceivably take a stance on a specific bill, but then it does need to go to the main board for final approval. So as much as we take a certain direction, on a specific bill, and conceivably on a specific bill, and considerations on things that we would like to amend, it does take the full board to agree. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll open it up to those in the room. If you have specific bill or bills that you would like to talk about, please raise your hand, and we'll start the process. Anyway, absolutely. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is my first time in this process, so I don't know how detailed we go, but I wanted to talk about Assembly Bill 2908 from the 2020 session. It was introduced by Assembly Member Lowe. It's been discussed with Senator Cortese, and it's stalled. It basically is a very simple bill to prohibit navigation applications from sending traffic into very high fire hazard zones, especially in times when there's high risk. And it sounds, pretty intuitive that you wouldn't want traffic flooding into narrow streets that are part of the high fire hazard zones. But it also is something that would require the cooperation of the navigation application companies. Now, interestingly, we had discussions with two of them, and they're not opposed to it. They just want to see it applied evenly. So it would take a state law to do that, and they wouldn't do it unilaterally, was the sense. That it would put them, at a disadvantage if one app were respecting that and another weren't. So that's pretty much it. It's a little bit old, and it looks to me like there's still some language that needs to be worked on, but it's seems like a pretty good idea.
Thank you, Ben. Next.
I have a few. So one of the City of Mountain View sponsored bills is AB 791. It's by Assemblymember Lee. Is for transit only traffic lanes. Our city takes full support of bills before we socialize them, so that has our full support. And I can send over the fact sheet over to Shally. And then two other bills.
And can you just, do you have a quick summary of what it's trying to do with transit
Sure.
only? Yeah.
The bill expands local authorities to allow paid and free buses and other vehicles to use transit only traffic lanes.
Okay.
So, kind of, our communities are coming back, so, but this bill would help enable that as we're encouraging people to live their hybrid lives. And then there's two other bills that we've that have been supported and written by our local assembly member that we've written in support letters of, and those are AB 1420. That's by Assemblymember Berman. It's for firearm citations, and AB 1598 by Assemblymember Berman, which is firearm safety education. And while those aren't sponsored by the city, those are also two bills of interest. So I just wanted to bring those up. And I think he visited the board, I believe, last month and discussed them. Both bills relate to gun safety, which is a priority of the city's association. So I don't know, I need to talk more about him if he was just here, but.
Okay.
Those are our bills. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. Anyone else? Lisa?
Thank you. So one is a measure and the other one is a bill. And I know Ellen is very familiar with this because Cal Cities has been talking about it a lot. It's the CBRT measure, the Taxpayer Protection and Government Accountability Act. On the 2024 ballot, November 2024 ballot. And it's essentially attempting to reinstate a 2/3 approval by residents of cities for special taxes. And we know we need special taxes for mental health services, infrastructure, different things, or local jurisdictions need funding for. And so currently it's by simple majority, but this measure would revert to the 2/3 majority approval, which would make it more difficult for us as local jurisdictions to pass our local special tax measures. So I would love to, there's a resolution that Cal Cities has as a template. So I would really like this committee to consider it. And then the second bill, it's AB 573. It's by one of our local representatives. Is he speaker? Is Rivas speaker yet, or it's official?
June,
So soon to be speaker, one of our Santa Clara County representatives. It's his organic waste meeting recovery product procurement bill. And essentially it's expanding on the bill that was passed a couple of years ago, where it will give cities the ability to procure organic waste that was originally created in California, but somehow shipped out of state. We can procure that to meet the different requirements that each local jurisdiction has to meet annually currently. So, and we can talk about that at the future meeting, but I really think it will help us during the transition period.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
We're supporting SB 10, authored by Senator Cortese, and it has to do with the fentanyl crisis, and it's an expansion of prevention and education efforts to combat overdoses of fentanyl among youth. And it's a priority bill for him, and his office did reach out to our legislative subcommittee and asked for support of that. And the other bill, which probably may not have interest by all cities, but it's the AB 742, which is having to do with police canines. And our legislative subcommittee just this week took or submitted a letter in opposition to it because our police chief and our public safety feel that the use of canines in certain situations is an additional tool to address a situation where it reduces lethal means by guns, by having the police dogs, the canines intervene. So we're opposed to that one.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Oh, thank you. So we haven't discussed any bills as a council, but however, I thought our assignment was, when we left, was if we heard something that we would like to follow up with, to bring it forward. So that's what I did. So oh, good. So actually, I was actually meeting with one of our police officers and, talking about, crime and theft, and which has become a big problem. And he made me aware of AB 1708, which wants to change property crimes and thefts. And actually, the League of Cities is working on this as well. So I thought that would be a good one because it's a problem that everybody is having with, and it would counter Proposition 47. So, or work with Proposition 47 to, just put some, just some accountability to, the people that are, just stealing all the time, doing the catalytic converters and the packages and everything else. The other one that I heard about is Assembly Bill 1379, and this has been brought forward by Diane Pappin, Assembly Member Diane Pappin, and this bill would actually I found it interesting because what she is looking to try to do or want to do is to make, how we are all in this hybrid meeting space right now, that to make it so that people could continue to meet. And so like this article that I read in the Record B said, you could walk into a council meeting and there's nobody there because everybody is, on Zoom or, on their iPads or whatever. So, so there's concern that it's taking away that ability to be of openness and transparency and keeping, our people accountable, our electeds accountable. So, so for that reason, because it is such a continuing topic of discussion, I thought that it would be something to follow, something that would be good to follow. So those are my only two.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah. And we'll get, and remote. Here. Still muted. There we go.
All right. So I'd like to bring forward two bills that have been endorsed by the city of San Jose. The first one is SB 225, which is the Community Anti-Displacement and Preservation Program. And the second is the Vehicle Speed Safety and System Pilot, AB 645. And I'll pass it over to Zane from the city to explain a little bit more.
Sure. SB 225 would create the Department of Housing and Community Development's Community Anti-Displacement and Preservation Program with an aim of acquiring and rehabilitating unrestricted housing units while attaching long-term affordability restrictions on units and preventing current residents from being displaced. The department would hire a private sector entity or consortium to manage the program for 5 years and give out loans to eligible borrowers with grants issued to public entities. Also, the bill would set up the Community Anti-Displacement and Preservation Fund in the state treasury for monies to be used for program purposes when appropriated by the legislature. And then AB 645 would authorize the cities of Los Angeles, San Jose, Oakland, Glendale, Long Beach, and the city and county of San Francisco to create a 5-year speed safety pilot program between now and January 1st, 2032 to monitor and enforce roadway speeds. This will require extensive community outreach and local approval of a use policy and equity analysis before implementation, preempting with warnings instead of citations within the first 60 days of the program. Data from the program would be kept strictly confidential for only 5 days or 60 days if there's a violation. Fees start on a relatively small and significant fee reduction measures for those who are financially burdened, as well as opportunities for community service in lieu of fees. All of these rules have been established to ensure proper implementation of the program and ensure street safety. And we think this is incredibly important because successful implementation of this automated speed enforcement may be something that other cities within the county would look to based on the data that would be provided after San Jose's, if this was passed after San Jose's implementation. Thank you.
And And if I remember, 645 does, it's all video cameras and computers, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Just reconfirming, okay. Anyone else with proposed bills? So I had the same one that Nisa had as far as, there's been a lot of advocacy and I'll go through the bills that we've signed from a city standpoint. I do think there was one bill which I have now forgot. I was mainly coming with the one that the taxpayer bill, which I thought was critical from my standpoint. There is a bill which not many people have been talking about, which I can't remember the number at this point, which would basically, from a bargaining standpoint, say that all casual employees are under full bargaining unit and benefits, and from that standpoint, in talking to our city, it would basically mean that we'd have to have half the number of casual employees, because if we added benefits to every part-time person, it would be pretty much impossible for our cities to do a lot of our summer programs and all of that. So I can't remember what that bill number is, but I will forward that. I will add that to the list, because I do think there's a lot of people who don't know that it exists, that it would cause detrimental effects to our cities on. So
Larry, if I may, I believe it's AB 1484.
that's it. Thank you.
What's the name? What's the number?
1484.
1484.
Is that the one that Larry Stone is?
The
Yeah.
sponsor is, it's spelled ZBUR.
The Larry Stone was doing a different one. There is that one also, which I'm questioning on, that I've been having discussions on staff on whether or not affordable housing sites, if they never build, do they immediately, so they get benefits from affordable housing that they're not paying their full property taxes on. I'm not sure if that's the one that you're referring to, but there's a bill that basically, once they declare it that it will be an affordable housing site, they don't have to pay property taxes anymore. And conceivably, there's no restriction, what we've done, I just signed a letter of advocacy on that, for basically saying you have X number of years to start building, because this is conceivably a way that a developer could get away from property taxes for many, many years and not build anything. And then at some later date say, oh, I'm not building affordable housing. And so there's looking to amend to basically put provisions in to make sure that if it's going to be affordable housing, you need to start breaking ground and moving forward. But
Which one was that?
I can't remember the
Oh,
bill
okay.
number. But I'll add that to the list. But I do think it's worthwhile. Many of our cities focus on, we survive on our property taxes, as most of you know, as we're looking at the budget process right now. And, to conceivably say a developer indicates that they may or may put affordable housing there at some point just to get rid of the tax liability. Yeah, the property tax liability is just would affect our cities more and more. So, any other bills?
I don't know the name of the bill, but this is for estate tax purposes, the readjustment of ongoing real estate taxes from the county. They have an amendment for that, so that if you have the first to die and then the second to die, both of the cost bases of a property are adjusted upward, so that if there is a sale, there is no taxation. However, the County of Santa Clara increases to market value the percentage for the taxes. And so if you bought the property for 100,000 and it's worth 5 million now, your taxes on it before were maybe $1,000 a year. Your taxes on it now are like $60,000 a year.
Okay.
So what the tax is trying to do is it's trying to force people to sell out who are beneficiaries of these properties. Now, the amendment is to adjust that so that there is no step up in the real estate taxes. And
So it's a permanent Prop 13 fixture for the families? Is that what?
basically, it's SC4, I think. I don't know.
Didn't they,
They were talking about it.
because I
In the
thought that
Senate.
they did not, they did
I
vote.
thought they killed
They
it,
killed it, yeah.
but we'll see if you can find it and send it to Shali and myself if you can't, and we'll add it to the list if it's dead, then it's a very quick discussion. But so that's kind of, sure.
Forgive me, I'm
No.
late to the party here. AB 1373. And the trailer bill on that, did that get raised? That's the Silicon Valley Clean Energy, the CCA.
I did not.
Oh geez, that's gotta be at the top of the list.
Okay.
Not
Good.
that I feel strongly, but I feel
I
strongly.
know, yes, absolutely. Okay, anything else? Any other bills? Good, I think that's a good, it's a good starting list, and I appreciate, that input, it's like, I think, and this is, this is one of the big things about what this organization can do, and especially LAC, is raise awareness for some of these bills. And there's so many bills that our staffs, and we see varying levels of how much staff we have to follow what's happening at the state level. But there are bills that conceivably have very, very big implications to our cities that it would be better to raise that awareness as soon as possible. So, just having this list and having your staff go through it conceivably, before we even get around to talking about it from the cities association standpoint, can actually have a lot of benefit. So I look at that as also one of the other positive things of just creating this list. So if you didn't send me your bills, yes, Lisa?
Sorry.
That's
I
fine.
was just thinking next steps, because I think our next meeting is in August.
August 10th, yes.
And so is the plan to have all these on the August agenda?
So definitely, we'll see where things stand in August. This is always the problem of where we go, but I think the big thing for me is, having at least all of us kind of take this back to our organizations and figuring out whether or not our cities want to advocate on any of these. But because by August, they will have either died or made it through the process. And it's figuring out before they do the final votes and trying to figure out where this organization stands. And I know this is always the problem, that everything is so fluid from what's happening at the state level in Sacramento. It's hard for us to push through advocacy because conceivably 2 weeks later, we might be completely for a bill that they finally amended in a positive way, or completely against. So I understand, and especially taking July off makes it a little difficult. But I think this is a good start. And yeah, if you have comments. And Peter, did you have a comment? Or is your staff?
Yeah, Zane has I just wanted to offer that we're happy to sort of provide some technical assistance here as we go through this process. And, we have some tools that are available at our disposal. I also wanted to just mention that the bill suspense deadline is May 18th. So we'll have a much clearer picture of how some of this legislation nets out probably this time next week. And, happy to sort of comb through that list. The only one that I'll just offer is that AB 1379 is already dead. So.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Which one died?
1379. Okay, good. So with that,
I think one of the problems that we have, our staff is really thin,
I think
and even our time, and so I really like how you said you have a subcommittee it's just a matter of coordinating, but our staff time is limited, so the lack of resources and the technical support, so
oh, absolutely.
that's a big challenge. It's been a big challenge for a while. So
Right. And
just
I
wanna
think,
put that out there.
no,
I'm sure
and
I'm not the only city that.
no, I think every one of our cities doesn't have a large staff.
Right.
to focus on what's happening with those bills. So it's the relationships of those council members a lot of times with their state representatives, kind of at least they focus on a few bills, but I think Cal Cities, and that's one of the value of the League of Cities, is trying to figure out what the highest bills are. And that's what my staff is, what our city staff is actually, in constant communication with them on what the important bills are. That being said, there are so many bills that conceivably your specific city might be more interested in. So, this is kind of a fluid sort of thing, if you have bills that all of a sudden, and I said two, because I didn't want a big influx of bills, but adding one or two more as things change, if something, especially if something is critical that you see that you want to raise that awareness on, please do that. Because even though we will not meet until August, we'll do intermediate probably once a month, if not more often, kind of updates on where those bills are. And if you have other bills, you can add them to that list. And I look at it as kind of educational. We're not discussing them. We're not taking a stance on them, but so we're within the Brown Act, but as far as it's like, here is our priority, and then we'll get through, we'll probably do a much longer meeting in August, just to give you that heads up, so we'll start a lot earlier, but to kind of discuss those bills, but we'll have that list, and you will have had that list for a long time ahead of that meeting. So just to give you that update. Yes.
So if you don't mind, I'd like to also add SB 423, which is a Wiener bill, and then also SB 634, which is a Becker bill.
Can you give a quick summary?
Yeah, so on SB 423 is
It's like 35. It's
SB 35, sorry, SB 35
Yeah.
extension. Yes, okay.
extension.
Yeah.
And then the other one, 634 by Becker, is it creates a new type of low barrier navigation centers called Opportunity Housing, and expands the by right approval for low barrier navigation centers to include opportunity housing projects. So what they do is they actually go out and seek property owners who might be building in the future, but the land is still vacant and nothing's on it. So then they can put their navigation center, and it's very, very sturdy, modular type of housing. The group that is doing is called Dignity Moves. Yeah. So, and I think and it's short term. So they're only there for 5 years. So if the owner wants to take back the land and actually put on their building, they can do that. But it certainly gives people an interim place to go.
Anyone else? I see no one. Go back to my agenda, sorry. Yes.
So I just had a question. So I was asking Shally, would it be possible to get a comprehensive list of all the bills we shared with you, and then?
Oh, no, that's,
Before the.
yes, yeah,
okay, Before
so,
August?
yeah,
Okay.
no, absolutely. So the first, sorry. So the first step is within the next week or two,
Okay,
we will update, because I know that there are a few people that didn't put forward bills. So we'll let it settle for about a week, and then we'll just summarize all the different bills that people proposed. And then, and then kind of give an update probably every 4 weeks after that.
Okay. And my second question is, we just had VTA PAC earlier today, and there were 5 bills that are of interest to them. So I thought maybe I could send them to you. Just so the group can see the bills that they're watching.
Okay.
I just thought, because I think a lot of us are looking at
Absolutely.
the same stuff.
Yep, makes sense. Okay, anyone else?
I've got kind of a question, observation, comment. I think there's a huge amount of value in having this group have contact with our representatives in Sacramento. And do we have an inventory of, and if you think of a matrix with the representatives' names at the top in columns, and the rows are the individual people that are here in the room and our other council members who's got the relationships so that if we've got an issue, we know kind of the left hand knows what the right hand is doing when we're dealing with one of the assembly members or a senator. And I just think that, you know, you hear something once, that's fine. But if you hear from multiple people, then it's like, gee, there's a lot of constituents in this area that have the same issue. And I think we've got a much stronger voice if we understand that and we manage that versus it just is there. So I'm kind of new to this, so those are. Can you comment on that?
Sure, absolutely. So since it's not agendized, we didn't have, and that's fine. We didn't have a list, let's say a spreadsheet. We did have several members that were like, I will go talk to my assembly person or my state senator on this issue. So it was more from that standpoint as opposed to, and I'll say a lot of this was NISA taking on between Peninsula Division and this organization, talking to a lot of the state representatives from that standpoint. But there are multiple of us that took on, okay, I want to drive this stance on this bill. And it wasn't like a spreadsheet, but it was like, okay, I want to talk to my rep on this specific item and how it should change. Because, a lot of this is we know sometimes that, it's not the support or oppose, but it's amend. It's like, okay, assuming that the majority of these bills aren't going to die, half of them at least, if they were going to go forward, how would we like to see them improved? Because a lot of times, and I'll be honest, a lot of times some of the bills affect our cities negatively, regardless of what state they end up in. Can we make positive improvements on them? And that's some of the discussions that we'll have in August. But that's some of the best things that we can do to either educate our representatives on how this would negatively affect our cities, or how they can conceivably change that bill to make it a little more palatable for our different cities.
And just add to it there, because I was
Thank you.
chair last year. So we send these letters from the Cities Association, and these letters are signed from the chair and the president. And so it outlines the position we've taken as an association. And if we're proposing amendments, they're also outlined in those letters. These letters go to committee chairs, all the representatives in Santa Clara County, all the Sacramento representatives from Santa Clara County. And so as chair, I got phone calls because they'll see my name there. So I expect Larry will be getting the calls. And so I had the opportunity to call Rich and Morgan. So I used that. I was basically the hub. So that's how it has worked in the past.
Yeah.
Because the letters, and they do respond to our letters. They do look at our letters. They have staff follow up with follow-up questions. And that's how we've operated in the past.
Okay, that's all encouraging. Can we put this, and I know it's not agendized, but it would be good to have a deeper discussion on this in August.
Yes.
Because I think there's a lot of value there.
No.
Okay, sorry, and thank you for bringing me up to speed on that. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And thank you.
You will
Nisa.
get the call.
Oh, I know I will. Yes.
Discussion on the process, is that how I should?
The process, yeah, we'll talk about it after. Yeah, offline. Anything else on this item? Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Peter.
Hey, appreciate that. It just, as we're talking about agendas and agendizing things, I noticed that on the website, it has still June 8th as a meeting for KSLAC. So just wanted to flag that so that we're making sure that agendas are properly done. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 7:10. Thank you all.